In the beginning, there was nothing. 14 billion years ago, even time didn't exist, science tells us. Suddenly, boom! A super hot, dense ball of plasma and gas explodes, hotter than any sun. It begins to cool off, slowly, and then to swirl. The plasma turns into gases, swirling around, forming huge mega galaxies. Smaller bits form galaxies, and within those galaxies, smaller bits swirl around. You see, gas and energy likes to move apart, but matter, gas, things that you can touch and feel and smell, those like to be together. It's because of gravity, the stuff that holds you to the ground. Gravity begins to pull things together even as they're trying to fly apart, and that swirling motion forms the galaxies and solar systems. And some of the solar systems are just stars, just suns up in the sky like any other. But quite a few of them have planets. Planets like our Earth. 5 billion years ago, our Earth is brand new. It's just a big ball of magma with chunks of slightly cooler magma floating around in it. But it cools, and eventually it forms a skin over it, like on a cold morning when you find ice covering a puddle of water. Just a crust on top of all that magma. That's the first rock 4 billion years ago. If you look closely, you can see some shiny spots on this rock. Those are crystals from that first rock 4 billion years ago. Now, rock is pretty tough stuff. The first rock was granite. But it turns out that as the Earth cooled, clouds started to form and it began to rain. And no matter how hard rock is, when the rain falls on you for 100 years, and then 1,000 years, and then 1,000,000 years, and then 1,000,000,000 years, well, water is even stronger than rock. So tiny bits of this rock get smashed off and turned into sand, and that flows down streams and into giant oceans. Layers of sand form on the bottom of the ocean, and after 1,000,000,000 years, tiny little microscopic creatures begin to live in those oceans, along with the sand. Those creatures eventually develop shells made out of calcium, and when those creatures die, they fall down into the sand. And when a lot of them died, you get a whole layer of calcium on the sand. Then you get a layer of sand on top of that. And then more creatures die, and you get a layer of calcium. And so on and so on and so on, over and over. And those layers get deeper and deeper and deeper. And as they get deeper, they get heavier and they get pushed together and they turn into new rocks. The sand becomes sandstone. The calcium turns into limestone. Well, that limestone doesn't stay at the bottom of the ocean. Well, some of it does, but there's still magma down there, pushing up, wanting to erupt as volcanoes, and sometimes when it pushes, it bulges things up into a mountain range. That limestone and sandstone and old granite get pushed up into mountains made of hundreds of different kinds of rock. You see, even if this was sandstone and that was limestone, when the magma touches it, that hot magma, it starts to melt it again. Kind of like a snowman on a sunny day, and he begins to fall over, and then it freezes again. So we've got these swirly, curvy bits, which is where the magma touched it and melted it, and then the sandstone turns into quartzite, and the limestone turns into marble, expensive and beautiful. So we've got these new mountains now made up of hundreds of different kinds of rock, but we don't have our rock yet. Our rock is buried deep inside of those mountains, but it's still raining. There are still rivers, and now the Earth is cooled enough that we start getting things called ice ages, filled with giant glaciers. Glaciers that can bury the mountains in snow and ice. Those mountains of ice that we call glaciers work just like teeth, chewing up the mountains into giant apartment block-sized buildings of apartment-sized blocks of of rock falling and tumbling down the cliffs, breaking into smaller bits, eventually getting pushed into rivers. They tumble down the stream and they get smoothed out and smaller until our rock gets deposited on a piece of land, and the river dries up and shrinks. Eventually it becomes a place called Saskatoon. This was in a farmer's field, and farmers hate rocks. So they used a team of horses to pull it out and leave it by the side of the road. Later on, I came across this rock. I thought it would be the perfect thing to show you guys and talk about the history of the earth and the universe and well, of our planet. So I got some friends. They helped me move it into a truck, and I brought it here to show you guys. That's the story of this rock.